So I'm here today with Dr. Paul Koch, an associate professor in the Department of Plant Pathology at UW-Madison. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Glenn.
So can you tell us a little bit about your research program? Like, what are you working on? What are your students working on?
Sure, we've got a lot of different projects going on in various realms of turfgrass pathology, but I kind of like to boil it down to two separate areas, and that's modeling and microbiomes. So we've got several different disease predictive models that we're working on, predominantly in snow molds and both in sort of traditional long duration snow cover environments, and then also in the microdochium patch environment, such as the Pacific Northwest, Northern Europe. And then we're also sort of expanding some of our dollar spot model research into other areas. And then we're doing a lot of work in microbiomes and sort of understanding the wealth of microbial activity that is associated with a turfgrass system, and different ways that we can use those microbiomes to help us manage turf in a more sustainable manner.
Got it. That microbiome stuff is fascinating. I've known you for over 10 years, maybe close to 15 now. How has that field changed, and like what types of studies are you doing now that were not possible 15 years ago?
Yeah, the microbiome field is just changing so rapidly because of the ability to afford deeper sequencing than we could before. Right before, you would kind of focus on one bacteria or one fungus, and you could sequence that, and then maybe focus on another one that you knew was in that area. But now you can just take a sample of turf or a sample of soil, sequence all the bacteria and all the fungi that are present, and really get a deeper understanding of what's all present. Now, the flip side of that is that you're getting so much data and so much information. Really, a lot of the more recent advancements in microbiome science has been on the analytics side, the bioinformatics, because of all that data. So that's really where the expertise is needed. And we recently hired a research scientist, a full-time staff member in our lab, Dr. Mingyi Chow, who's a microbiome expert, has been with us before, has done work in other areas of agricultural and fruit soil health, in biofuels soil health. And so we're really excited to have him here, sort of leading the bioinformatics aspects of our microbiome research.
That's really cool. I'm curious, with the projects that you work on, you're here in Wisconsin, and I know you do a lot of regional research in different areas here, but how much of your research also branches out to other parts of the US, and how do you accomplish that? Do you collaborate, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so collaboration is critically important, I think, for any effective science to be taken up by a broader number of practitioners, in our case, golf course superintendents and other turfgrass managers. So I work regularly with other academics from around the country, at the universities, industry partners from around the country, and we also work on problems that have a broad applicability to turfgrass managers from around the country and around the world in many cases, right? Just because we research a problem that's important in Wisconsin doesn't mean that it's only important in Wisconsin. It's oftentimes very important for similar temperate climates. And even beyond that, the things that we learn in our climate are still things that can be beneficial to managing turfgrass in other climates as well, especially when we talk about those microbiome types of projects.
Got it. That makes sense. I'm curious. So you highlighted two different areas, modeling and microbiome work. At some point in the future, will that become one area? Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, right? The thing about microbiomes, right, is they're so specific to certain areas, and they change throughout the year, right? This is one thing we've learned, is that if we go to the same exact location say here in Madison, we sample it in May, July, and August, we're going to have very different microbiomes at those three different time points, because the weather has changed, right? It's the moisture's changed, the temperatures have changed, and so these are very dynamic systems. And so we can try and predict that through modeling, and there are people that try and predict sort of microbial structures and activity through modeling, certainly. But they're so niche, right, to certain areas and even certain times of the year within those areas, that it's in my opinion, that's a little ways off, using modeling to really predict the exact activity of a certain microbial group. But there's, the advancements in modeling are just as powerful as the advancements in microbiomes. And there's a lot of models that are used to sort of analyze the the microbes that are present. So using modeling to predict what the microbes will do, I think that with the continued advancements in modeling, that's probably not that far off.
That's pretty cool. You mentioned some other folks in your department, and but highlighted that your primary constituents are golf course superintendents. How much of your research does branch into other fields, agriculture or other natural sciences? Like,
yeah, I mean, so in particular, again, going back to the microbiome area again, microbes are present in turf and microbes are present in agricultural systems as well, right? And so there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of things that are unique about turf. Being a very close mode system, a very highly managed system. The soils are typically highly managed, much more so than a normal agricultural environment. But I work closely with my colleagues on the agricultural and horticultural side of things here as well, because there's a lot of similarities with how the microbes interact with pathogens, how they interact with nitrogen cycling and carbon sequestration, and those things are relevant across all plant systems. So certainly we work closely with our non-turf colleagues here at the university and elsewhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. So I'm curious, you mentioned other constituents you work with, your colleagues, of course, but then industry and, other outside entities, associations, things like that. How do you, let's see, so let's say you have research findings. How do you ultimately have those findings translated into something that an end user can pick up and start using? Like, do you have any examples of that, or just how do you see that process?
Well, I mean, the end goal of all the research that we do is to have it be used, right? That's not very fun to do research that then gets tucked away in a journal somewhere that never gets used. So all the research that we do, we hope is useful on some level at some point in time, right? Some of the research that we do when we, test certain products or whether we test certain cultural practices, right? There's a much more immediate applicability to that research. Other projects that we do, especially sort of in this microbiome realm, those are probably more longer term investments that we're making, right? We're just kind of understanding what the microbes are doing, what's there, how does what we do affect what the microbiome does. And so that's a longer term process. We've been really heavily invested in the microbiome for probably 5 years now, and we've learned a lot, but we still have a long ways to go as far as like immediate applicable research results that an end user is going to implement on the golf course or in their lawn care operation or sports turf management operation. So those, there's different levels of use, but the end goal is all the research that we do become usable to the superintendent or the turfgrass manager. And we do that through, communication with various groups. We do that through partnership with industry. I think one thing that we've really realized, we've tested a lot of sort of plant-based compounds over the past several years. And it's one thing for the compound itself to work in vitro in the lab. It's an entirely different thing for that compound to work in the field. And one of the big gaps that we have from our work and research to a commercially effective product is the formulation of that product. And that's where we just don't have the capacity at the university. So partnering with industry to add some formulation improvements to these sort of raw molecules is a huge aspect of making some of our research successful. And we've partnered with industry on a couple of projects. We've talked with you on some of our other projects on how we can improve certain molecules to make them more efficacious in the field, right? So that's one huge area that we always partner with industry on, and that we need to partner with industry on, because we just don't have that capacity here at the university to formulate.
That makes sense. Yeah. This is kind of an open-ended question, but in terms of industry, what else do you see that where you're like, you see a problem and you think I need a solution from industry, or where you think I wish industry was working on this more? Is there anything that jumps out like that?
Well, so the formulation aspect that we just talked about, that's a huge part. And in addition to that, I would just say general investments in improving the efficiency and the sustainability of turfgrass management moving forward. I think there's been huge gains in that area, but we're coming into an era where we don't have a lot of new pesticide molecules. I'm in pathology, so really my focus is on disease management. We're coming into a time where there's not a lot of new molecules coming to market. We're seeing increasing resistance with the molecules that we have on hand, which makes the management of our current available tools essential. And so any new innovation, whether it's products or strategies or adjuvants or whatever it might be, that can help the superintendent maintain the current products that we have and also reduce inputs, whether those inputs are pesticides or fertilizers or particular water in many parts of the country and around the world. I think those are the areas that industry in partnership with the universities in certain cases are really important for moving turfgrass management and other plant management forward into a time of increasing uncertainty with climate change and reduced number of products and all those sorts of things that we're currently experiencing and that we anticipate only getting worse down the road.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think the collaboration is so key. Like we all tend to get really specialized in our area of expertise, and even companies do, right? Like they're really known for one thing or one area. But then when you get out in the field, it's a whole system, right? So irrigation, water, soil, climate, diseases, weeds, insects. I mean, all those things are all coexisting. But then it's hard to make research projects that have all of those things.
Yeah,
well,
I think another thing where industry will be important moving forward is the technology to really implement a lot of these management strategies in a precision manner, right? We talk about precision plant management. We talk about my program a lot about precision disease management, and that's using, that could be using microbiome data, that could be using disease predictive modeling data. And all that data collection is great, but if you don't have the technology to implement and use that data in a manner that helps you as the turf manager, then that research really goes to waste. So I think that the industry has already done that a lot, but we'll see continued improvements in the technology to use all this data we're collecting to help manage these systems in a more precise manner and really pinpoint what areas of the golf course or the sports field or the agricultural field needs that fertilizer or needs that pesticide, rather than blanket applications of all these things over these large acreages.
Totally, yeah. Have any of your models been integrated into a precision system? Like I know you guys have the dollar spot model, which you've been Has there been any discussion or thought about how that would?
Yeah, so we worked for many years with Damon Smith and Jim Kearns and others on the development of the Smith-Kearns dollar spot predictive model, and it's a widely used model. Models take time to build. It took us about 10 years to really develop and field test that model, and it's been picked up by numerous companies and put into sort of suites of offerings for customers. Some of them are free, some of them are premium and paid for subscriptions. I talked before about sort of new uses of that dollar spot model. Where we've really moved in some of our work is planting multiple weather stations around your golf course that can use the model to determine your dollar spot pressure around the golf course, rather than have like one number for your entire golf course. And in golf in particular, I think this is one reason that disease predictive models have been less effective in golf than they have in agriculture and horticulture, is because in golf you have a tremendous variation in microclimates around the golf course. So you might have an open, higher area that has very low disease pressure, and you might have a little pocket of a little golf green in this, this little valley of trees that's going to have much higher disease pressure. So if you spray the entire golf course based on one area, you're going to overspray some of the golf course and underspray other areas of the golf course. And so what we want to do moving forward then is use technology, right? We've already got a model developed, but use technology to really pinpoint where on the golf course dollar spot is going to be occurring soon, so you can just spray those parts of the golf course. And so we've done a couple of tests with, we've done some work with the USGA, we've done some work with Spectrum, we've done some work with Toro. And, at this point, we've shown that it works. We've shown that you can really pinpoint areas of the golf course that will be having severe dollar spot pressure soon. it's further advancements in the technology and making that technology affordable to plant all these weather stations around the golf course to really monitor it. And again, it gets back to having some sort of system that will allow you to see what the stations are all reporting and implement a spray program based on that.
Yeah, and I could see it being tricky. Like, if you do them all the same, then your reapplication interval, or everything's kind of the same. But now, if you have 3 or 4 different areas on different programs, then that technology and equipment and the data part behind it seems so important.
Yeah. So then it also leads to then a need to change how we spray, right? An advancement in the spray technologies, right? Because when I've talked to superintendents about this, the first thing I hear back is, well, I don't want to, I got a 300-gallon sprayer. I don't want to spray, 3 acres with that, right? I want to fill it up and spray. And so there'll need to be an advancement in how we spray, or a change in how we spray. Low volume sprayers. In ag, it's not uncommon to have drone sprayers. And so maybe, you've just got a couple of gallons of spray liquid in a drone sprayer, and you just program that sprayer to go out and pinpoint areas of the golf course. I don't think that's that far off in the turf market, because it's already present in ag. So
that'd be super cool. It's tough too, because sometimes in turf we have these tank mixes that have 14 different things in there, and so it's like, now how do you spot treat certain areas? So
right.
yeah, absolutely. It'd be exciting to see what that looks like 5 years from now, or something 10 years from now. Cool. I think I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and just kind of go back to your program. And I want to ask about students and pipeline, and kind of like what you see in terms of that. What does it look like to get into a pathology program today versus how it might have been 10 years ago? I know turf management has had a decline in terms of student numbers, but then pathology is kind of a subset of that, and your work branches into not just turf. So any commentary on that?
Yeah, as far as the students that have come into graduate school, right? Typically, they're related to the students that are in 4-year turf programs. And so the decline of the number of students in 4-year undergraduate programs has led to a direct decline of people with turf grass interest enrolling in graduate school. And so really where we've gotten our graduate students from over the past 5, 6, 7 years is people that come in with a general interest in plant pathology. They might not be turf people, anybody with turf experience or any great interest in going into the turf grass industry. But we bring in students that have a general interest in plant pathology, general experience in plant pathology. And just like we talked about before with relating our research to the agricultural and horticultural worlds, a lot of the things apply, right? If we do work that is especially related to the microbiome or disease predictive modeling, a lot of times those principles apply to other aspects of agriculture and horticulture that those students might be a little more interested in going into in their future career. So we've had, what I'd call the turf heads come through here in graduate school. We've had several of those, but those numbers are lower than they were 10, 15 years ago when the 4-year programs around the country had more students. And so we've had to branch out a little bit, bring in people that are more general plant pathologists and have them come in and do a lot of times excellent work, and we get a lot of excellent knowledge out of that. But it's much oftentimes more broadly applicable to non-turf systems as well. So that's kind of how we've handled the challenges of bringing in students for our program. And staffing is an issue, right, in every industry right now, and we're having the same issues in finding graduate students to come in and help do the research in our program. So
yeah, that makes sense. One thing I think your program's always been really good at is engaging with industry and with superintendents and things like that. So you have summer field day coming up, right, at OJ Noer. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so our summer field day, summer turfgrass field day is coming up, presented by the Wisconsin Turfgrass Association on Tuesday, August 2nd. And it's really a chance for us to show off our research to the industry. We talked about before, the end goal of all of our research is to have it be used by turfgrass managers. And so this gives us a chance to really sort of show the industry what's coming down the pipe, right? So these might be things that you might be using on your golf course maybe as soon as next year, if we're looking at products or cultural practices, or it might be something that's coming down the line 4 or 5 years from now, right? I remember many years ago now talking about a dollar spot model that was coming down the pipe, look out for it. And now it's used around the world. So the field day gives us a chance to show the industry what we're working on, give them a chance to come and walk on the plots and see those things. And I think that's something that you just can't replicate in an online webinar, right? Webinars are great to talk about research. And we do virtual field days sometimes too, and walk over the plots with a camera and stuff. But I still think nothing beats being out on the turf, talking face to face, asking questions, and looking at those things in real time. So that's a great chance for us to interact with the industry, and I think it's a great chance for the industry to come and see what we're doing, and likely some of those things they'll be doing at their golf course and their turf grass site in the near future.
Yep, we'll definitely be there. It's always a great event. So highly recommend. Highly recommend anybody else checking that out. Cool. Well, that's all I had today. So really appreciate your time, and thanks for highlighting what you guys are working on. It's really exciting stuff, and excited to see how everything progresses over the next several years here.
Thanks for the invite, Glenn.
Yep. Thank you.